So we have some major news when it comes to PlayStation and their studios and the pivot they've had going away from the games that they've made for so many years. And is Xbox to blame for something like this, where Sony is starting to change how they make games, and maybe, just maybe, this is a reason why Jim Ryan is no longer a part of Sony's PlayStation and running the show. Let's get into everything that's being said and all the breaking news, because there's a lot to talk about here from insiders and developers and everybody talking about how uncomfortable PlayStation has been for the last several years. Let's get into it. Alright, so you know the drill. If you like the content, hit that subscribe button and that like button. And if you want to be notified on future videos, hit that small little bell icon. And if you want to go that extra amount of support the channel, hit that join button. All the support is greatly appreciated. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is that we all know that Xbox has dominated in particular types of games. And for me personally, it's multiplayer games or co-op games, or as some people would say, games as a service, games that have a long-lasting time, they're on for several years, and they make a lot of money and generate a lot of revenue. Gaming for the last several years has gone down that route, if not the last 10 to 15 years. We look at games like Minecraft, we look at games like Fortnite, and of course Apex Legends, all these games that are games as a service that make the companies a lot of money. They understand that it's not just the games that make money, it's the software behind them and the player engagement attached to that. Now, for several years, I've said that Sony doesn't have any of those games. What Sony really does is that they have single player blockbusters that people love to play, including myself. I've played all of their games and I adore them. But again, they're games that you can finish in a weekend or a week or two, and then you don't go back to them as often. Not as often as you would go back to, say, Rocket League or Fortnite, games that people get to go back to and get more value out of. Counter-Strike, and of course, League of Legends and every single game Riot Games makes, not to mention the big game that Sony bought, or the big studio that Sony bought, Bungie and Destiny. All of these things compound together. They come together to describe what Sony's been doing for the last several years, and it's almost indication that Xbox and a couple other studios pushed them toward this. Now, let's get right into the article and see what it has to say, because there's a lot of information here. But over the last 2 years, Ryan has overseen a PlayStation shift towards games as a service, a popular industry buzzword referring to video games, usually multiplayer, that can be monetized over long periods of time. It's been an uncomfortable pivot for some of Sony's studios, which have spent the last decade building out teams of experienced developers to make big, cinematic adventure games that are played solo. Those single-player blockbusters are still in the works, and one, Spider-Man 2, will come to the PS5 in just a few weeks. But Sony's stable of game studios such as Naughty Dog, The Last of Us, Insomniac, Spider-Man, and Guerrilla Games Horizon have also been working on multiplayer service games, with mixed levels of success. Most have not been revealed yet, some have been cancelled or overhauled, such as the online game based on The Last of Us. Now, I will have to say something right now. We all know that The Last of Us, aka the new multiplayer faction for The Last of Us 2, which is called Factions, just laid off about 25 contractors, I believe. That is the new report that's coming out. And we've also heard for several months that Bungie saw that game, basically told Naughty Dog this isn't good enough, and let them move on. And the game's not going to have gamers gravitate to it and stay with it as a games as a service. Now, if you know Bungie, you know that their specialty is this. Destiny 2 have had over 10 years of success, they've made a bunch of money on it, and they're one of the best multiplayer developers out there next to Riot Games, Blizzard, Xbox, and all the other ones that specialize in those types of games. Throw in EA with Apex Legends. So what does this mean for Sony overall? Well, if you saw the last game show that Sony just put out, you know that all of their games were very multiplayer focused. Marathon, everything that was shown to Helldivers 2, it's all multiplayer focused because that's what Jim Ryan wanted to pivot to. He wasn't about generations, he wasn't about keeping everything on one platform, he was about expanding everything, but most of all, switching up how they make their games. And that's even something that Sean Layden brought up several years ago, where he said development of AAA games is unsustainable because it just costs too much money to make these big games that don't have that big of a return. And this is coming from everyone that's worked at Sony, that they need to start pivoting towards their software making them money instead of just the games. And I understand that the games are part of that software, but they need that software to have even more return, which is where the multiplayer comes in. And that's where I think Xbox truly did kind of alter what Sony's doing. Everybody saw Xbox with Game Pass and using their software to make more money and revenue, even though their games aren't going to be selling crazy. It's about the subscription fees and the steady generation of income from those subscriptions. Now, you throw on top of that games like Sea of Thieves, Halo, Gears of War, and everything else, even Grounded, that has multiplayer functions attached to them, and they're multiplayer focused, and that's where the money's going to be coming in. And that's where a lot of the money came in for Sea of Thieves. Now, you throw in Blizzard and Activision, and you have a crazy amount of multiplayer considered to be some of the top multiplayer games in one platform or one publisher, which is Xbox. And Xbox has been doing this for several years, to the point where I think Sony is looking at that, seeing how much revenue they're getting, and on top of it, how much less sales they're getting, yet they're still making a lot of money. So why wouldn't they look at that and kind of pivot to what they're doing? And I know that in the article, they even talk about this and what it meant for the game developers to do this pivot. Here's what's said. Game development teams that spent years working together tend to cultivate a certain style. Often making a drastic pivot from a familiar genre to something brand new can have disastrous results. Just ask the developers of Anthem. Games as a service are particularly difficult to create, as they require a formula that gets gamers to consistently play over long periods of time, which is a very different ask than a single story. And I do have to say that even people like Arcane that made Redfall, they were trying to make a games as a service. Now, there was reports that before Xbox bought ZeniMax Media, that they forced their developers to do the same thing that Sony's doing, which is pivot towards games as a service because they needed their games to sell well and make more money over time, generate revenue, consistent revenue, not just one big gulp revenue from a game coming out. That's something that hurt Bethesda and ZeniMax. We all can say that. Look at Fallout 76, look at Redfall, the games that they brought out, not to mention Wolfenstein Youngbloods. All those games were towards that pivot of what they wanted them to make. But once they got bought by Xbox, they switched over and did what they're supposed to be doing, which is making games that the developer was built to make. And that's the hard thing that I think Sony's going to run into in the next 2 to 3 years. A lot of the games that they've made are for multiplayer pivots. Now, I'm sure there's going to be single player games that we love, which that's what I want Sony to do. I kind of want them to stick to what they've been doing. I love their games. I love what they do. And if they start pivoting towards multiplayer, it takes away one of those games from me. It takes away one of those high quality single player games that I enjoy playing. PlayStation isn't a platform I stick on and play for days and days and months. It's a platform I go to every once in a while when they drop a first party game. I play it for a few weeks, if not a week, and then I move on and I do something else. But that's what they do for me personally. And I'm sure other people are going to have the same experience, or they love PlayStation altogether. No matter what it is, we know this pivot is happening because Jim Ryan saw what was going on at Xbox, saw what was going on at other publishers, and probably saw the writing on the wall with everyone else being bought out, like Activision Blizzard and other studios. So he pivoted, got Destiny to help make multiple decisions across multiple platforms and across multiple developers to help make their games more serviceable, more games as a service. So let's see where that goes, because I don't think it's going to shape up well for them. I think they have a long road ahead of them, and the person that's going to be taking over for Jim Ryan needs to start cutting these things out and actually see if this pivot was worthwhile or if they should go back to the traditional way of doing things. I don't know where they're going to go, but all I know is that they can continue to make their single player games, but they also do need to get some of these big games as a service games to make money for them to get constant generation of revenue. Let's hope that happens. Let's hope the competition continues to go out, and let's hope Xbox actually still drives Sony to do some of this stuff, because just like Sony drives Xbox, Xbox drives Sony. They're competition, and iron sharpens iron. But let me know what you think about this. Are you surprised that Sony pivoted to something like this and focused on multiplayer games? Or do you want to see Sony focus more on multiplayer games and then kind of put the single player games away? Or is it vice versa? Do you want more single player games from them, and then the multiplayer games you can get elsewhere? I feel like that's what's happening. A lot of people are getting their single player experiences from Sony, their single player and multiplayer experiences co-op from Xbox, and then third party fills in the blanks everywhere else. Where do you line up? I would like to know. Go down below and let me know. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please hit that subscribe button and that like button to support us out the channel more than you know. And give me a follow on Twitter at Zalker87. I'm always on there talking games and sharing my latest videos. Plus, I love interacting with everyone there, so get on Twitter and let's talk about gaming. Also, follow me on Xbox Live. My gamertag is Zalker87, just like my channel name. See what games I'm playing, and let's compete in achievements for the month. So right now, I've been jumping into a lot of games, but the big one I've been jumping into is Jedi Survivor. I'm having a blast playing this game. I love it so far. It's so big. It's so much better than the first game, and I really adored the first game. I thought it was very well done, but this one just has everything a little bit better. They put it to the nth degree. They started polishing everything, making everything better. The combat felt better. The world feels better. It's more expansive. There's more surprises. I'm just really enjoying the whole story aspect of it. And it's a game that I'm really into because I'm kind of in a Star Wars kick. I said in my last video, I've been jumping on Star Wars a lot, reading books, watching the shows, and just having a good time with it because I love that world. And I got to say that this game is probably one of the peak things in Star Wars right now. Not to mention the new performance patch came out, so that runs so smooth. But let me know what you're playing. Are you going to be playing something on Xbox Game Pass? Are you going to be on your Xbox, your PC, your PlayStation 5, your Switch, whatever it is? Let me know down below because that's what we're here for. It's to talk games. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching. And until next time, remember, enjoy your gaming. Later.